Welcome back to another episode of City Speak. I am Clarence Anthony, your host, and I'm the CEO and Executive Director of the National League of Cities. I am thrilled to be joined today by a leader who is deeply committed to the power of education and the promise of boosting economic mobility for everyone in America. After starting his career with KPMG, the global accounting firm, he moved into the healthcare space as the director of finance for both the UC Health University of Colorado Hospital and then named Swedish Medical Center in Seattle. His leadership and finance skills caught the eye of the Gates Foundation, and he was approached to join the foundation. He has been with the Gates Foundation since 2006, and today he serves as the president of the United States program. Under his leadership, he oversees a broad portfolio that includes early learning, K through 12, post-secondary, and education pathways in the workforce, as well as economic mobility and opportunity. Today, I am so excited to welcome the Gates Foundation president of the United States program, Allan Golston. Welcome, Allan, to City Speak.
Hi, Clarence. Thank you. Thanks for having me join you. It's an honor to be here with you.
You know, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while because I've followed your career, I've followed your work, and have been so impressed about the impact that you have had in the medical field, but also even understanding this concept of economic mobility and how education connects to that mobility. But I have to start with the question that I ask all of my guests, but especially mayors and other local leaders. It's your why. What drove you to this type of work and the purpose that you have in this work?
Well, thank you, Clarence. And again, thank you for having me on your podcast. It's an honor to be here. So my why is really a function of what I experience and what I was raised to believe and what I believe. And I carry that belief with me to this day, which is that every young person should have a shot at shaping their own future. And not just this ideal of this American dream, but to have that really happen in practice every single day for every single young person. And what we know, both in talking to people and in the data, is that our education and workforce systems make that ability to have a shot at shaping your own future harder than it needs to be. And I always try to carry with me stories about that remind me of why and help just anchor it in reality. And one of the stories that I carry with me is this young man. His name is Zaid, and he's a high school student that I met a couple of years ago in Yakima, Washington, here in Washington State. And Zaid was just this incredibly quiet but bright kid, and he discovered his passion for math, and he had this just dream. And when he talked about it, he lit up this dream of becoming an aerospace engineer. He was already earning college credit while he was still in high school. And as you listen to his story, I couldn't help but notice he was doing everything right. But also, as he was describing his story and the path ahead, which was still uncertain at the time, it was just full of barriers that he didn't create. And that story is important to me because, Zaid isn't alone. So whether it's students that I've met in New York who are trying to make the most of under-resourced classrooms, or leaders that make policy and our local decision makers in our wonderful cities across this country, their sense of urgency and their sense of kind of understanding the needs and the clarity of their aspirations is really what brings me to this work. So it's why I show up every day, because while we need to definitely focus on policies and systems, which is a large part of what the Gates Foundation does in its work. For me, I try to keep it personal, and for me, it is personal. And it's about all those Zaids in the world who are really working to have a shot in shaping their future and to make sure that they all have an opportunity to thrive. And I take that responsibility very, very seriously.
Your Zaid story really resonates with me, because I bring that same passion to my work at NLC growing up in Florida. And when people think of Florida, they think of palm trees
Yeah,
and a beach, right? Well, I
yeah,
grew up in rural Florida,
yeah,
working in the celery fields and all of those things, and understanding that barriers are there and having those resources to help you overcome those barriers are very important. But have you had personal experiences that inform your work at Gates Foundation through education and workforce?
yeah. I have. I think, like many of us, it starts with my parents. They came from modest means. Their opportunities were really limited to how much money their parents made, both my mom and my dad, and the zip code that they lived in. And they came from modest means. They were incredibly poor. And they understood, though, the power of education to be an engine of economic mobility and a critical part of an engine of economic mobility. And I was born into that context. I was born to a single mom in Denver. She was putting herself through nursing school. She married my dad, who adopted me. He put himself through school through the GI Bill after leaving the military. And I watched them work incredibly hard. My mom worked two jobs really for a large part of her career. My dad worked for the post office and he did construction on the side. And they showed me that hard work, of course, but more importantly, education could change the trajectory of a life. And I remember the dinner conversations where they were worried and struggling about money to, as over time they were able to do some saving and navigate into the middle class and our family into the middle class, the conversations became different. So while it was never a question about me going to college and uh, ideally getting a fulfilling career, the conversation shifted from, wow, how are we going to afford this? This is going to be a struggle, to real possibilities for my brothers and I to do better than they did. And so that idea that you can uh, have a dream about what you want to do and your family can have that, and that idea that with hard work, but also with education, you can pour those two ingredients together and you can really navigate the economic ladder and have a meaningful life where you can participate, is something that my parents experienced, that I was raised in. And it's what makes me really, really passionate about this work, because I feel like I was fortunate. Yes, there were barriers, but I had a lot of help navigating those barriers, from great teachers to great advisors to mentors to, parents who understood a bit about how to navigate our higher education system and even the K through 12 system. And it just taught me that those things should not be random based on who your parents were or how much money they made. They should be really a guarantee to everyone in this country. So that personal experience is something that I keep in mind as we're doing this work. And I think it's true. It's a universal experience in many ways of a lot of my colleagues here at the foundation. So we have a just strong sense of commitment and urgency to make that true for everyone, where there aren't barriers, and that everyone who wants to participate and invest in their future can do that.
You make me think of something I often say, that a lot of times municipal officials work to create a sense of community and a sense of commitment for their relevance by their work and by the programs that they implement. And for the last 5 years, you guys have been working with the National League of Cities to really focus in on using the skills and the touch of local leaders in carrying out that work. Why did you guys recognize that that was important to get your investment in those communities through the hands of cities, towns, and villages or local leaders?
Yeah, well, the foundation's work domestically is largely known for our work in education. It's a significant commitment that we've made to improve educational opportunities of this country. And over the years, as we've been working with partners to do that work, we saw some disturbing trends and the hard truth that economic mobility is declining in this country. And if you just take a statistic that I carry with me, that or fact actually, that is just really troubling. It's this one, that in the 1940s, 90% of children who grew up to earn more than their parents was 90%. So in the 1940s, 90% of the children grew up to earn more than their parents. And if you then fast forward to today, only 50% do. And I think it bears repeating, only 50% of today's children are and will grow up to earn more than their parents, which is exactly the opposite of what we want and what many of us experienced. So we decided that we needed to do something about that. And we really took a year to understand the challenges and what the root causes were. We talked to a number of experts, community members, local leaders, people in this country who were struggling, and to really get underneath what the issues were and what could be done. And one of the things of many that stood out was that partnering with local leaders was an essential part of anything that one could do, because local leaders are closest to the challenges and they're closest to the solutions in their communities. So we, as we developed this strategy, we thought, okay, there are a lot of local leaders. There is a lot of variation in what they're dealing with and what their aspirations are. And that's one of the reasons that we decided to work to partner with organizations like NLC, because you're close to the challenges, or your constituents and members are close to the challenges, they're close to the solutions. And what's incredible about the org and orgs like yours is that you have these members that you can bring together and convene, and not only convene, but they can create and share ideas and innovations that they've tried that are proven. And you can eliminate that, wow, I want to do this, but I don't know how, or I tried this, and it's not working. You eliminate a lot of the challenges that so many leaders have already faced, and can kind of pay it forward to other leaders to be able to boost economic mobility in their community. So that's why we decided to do it. That's why we work with partners like NLC. And it's just continues to be inspiring as we navigate this work. I'll give you one example, if you'll permit me, just to show the power of innovation at a local level. I had a chance to talk with two leaders in Durango, Colorado, which is in southern Colorado. It's a community of roughly 20,000 people. And the two leaders that I was able to just hear about what's going on in their community and what they were doing about it was named Aaron and Tommy. And the issue that they were having around economic mobility was something that was really characteristic of Durango, which is no one passes through there. People go to Durango for a reason. Like, they see the opportunity. It's a beautiful place to raise a family and live. And yet most people, or many people, I should say, have to have multiple jobs just to survive. And they were worried about economic opportunity and economic mobility, and people being able to come in and start businesses where they would earn enough to be able to support themselves and their family. And so they looked at one particular area, which was in the food area. And Durango is a place you go to visit. It's known for, food trucks and markets and really good food. I've been there several times, and it's all true. And what they discovered in looking at the food industry is that there were over 70 steps that if you wanted to start a food business, whether it's a food truck or a restaurant, 70 steps, all different parts of the city that you had to navigate to get the appropriate licenses and permits and all of the just documentation you needed to start a business. And they realized that was preventing a significant amount of people from being able to come to Durango and start these types of businesses that will contribute back to the community, but also position those entrepreneurs to be able to support themselves and their families. And they did some incredible innovation around coordinating this, simplifying it. They hired a navigator who could engage with these entrepreneurs and walk them through, that could speak Spanish, which is a critical need in that community for entrepreneurs. And they were able to fundamentally shift the pipeline of entrepreneurs going into the food industry. And I think when I spoke with them, they told me they were getting a few here and there, and it went to 28 new businesses opening up. So when you think about that example, you think, okay, that's an innovation. They learned from other colleagues in the NLC community about what to do and not to do. So they were able to avoid some of the challenges, and they were able to just deliver on that commitment that they made to their community to boost economic mobility and opportunity, particularly in this sector in their community. So it's inspiring to me because it speaks to the importance of local leadership, and it speaks to the importance of how local leaders can come together, create solutions, prove that those solutions are working, and to be able to share those across our country in ways that will propel economic mobility at scale.
No, and I will tell you, we really enjoy our relationship with the foundation in a way that helps us to see that economic mobility. And then once we work with one community, as you say, we scale it throughout the nation so that, the trick with mayors is that we'll come to the National League of Cities conference, we'll hear a new idea, and then we'll go back home as if we created it and don't tell them we heard it someplace else. We'll put a new name on it. But what's interesting is that from what I've experienced working with you all, you recognize that there's more than one way of achieving economic mobility. You
Yeah,
look at workforce,
yeah,
education. You look at small business investment,
yeah,
access to public benefits.
yeah.
So, how did you guys wrap all that into your vision for working with municipal leaders? What was the driver for all of those areas of focus?
We actually realized that there was no way we could be experts at all of those things. And there's no way you can, as one organization, address the different local contexts and the different priorities of local communities and their leaders. And so it is why we partnered with organizations like NLC, and it's why we really worked with your organization and a number of other organizations to create resources that we felt could capture all these ideas and different priorities in local contexts, and to be able to package them in powerful ways and to be able to share and disseminate those so that they were accessible to local leaders, and local leaders could find their priorities and see their context through these resources. And a couple of them are things that you are very aware of, but the economic mobility catalog, which is a set of resources that takes proven strategies that have been sourced from local communities by local leaders, but also captures how you implement them, because it's often as we all know, not just the what you want to do, but the how you do it and the advice. And here's what we tried. That's an example of where we wouldn't be able to understand and talk and promote and support those across the country at the scale that's needed. But working through partners like you and having those resources so that local leaders can access them, see them as a resource, know who to call. Hey, I'm stuck on this. Sounds like you did it. How did you solve it? Is really something that we've seen as powerful. So that economic mobility catalog is one example. The upward mobility framework is another example where it's aimed at helping kind of measure communities understand the impact of economic mobility strategies and the conditions that need to be in place in order to boost economic mobility. Those types of resources for us and how we're able to contribute to this are essential, in addition to the partnerships with national actors like NLC to be able to both create those resources, but also promote and scale and disseminate those resources.
Well, I thank you for that answer, and want you to talk about an announcement that I heard
Yeah.
about a wind down and what that means for the foundation, what that means for the issues that you are focused on, and yourself. What does that mean for you and the whole foundation's team?
Yeah. Well, the announcement was really, I think, and the events around it was a highlight of my time at the foundation. I've worked at the foundation really for 25
Wow.
years. And the decision was that Bill made the decision that the foundation will finish its work in 2045. So 20 years from now. And it was a remarkable kind of commitment of generosity, but also a powerful statement around clarity and focus. And in a time where there's a lot of uncertainty and still, as I mentioned, you know, economic trends aren't going in the right direction, or economic mobility trends for, hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands of Americans. It was such a compelling gesture to say that the foundation believes that there is a way to tackle the most pressing challenges of our time, whether that's in health around the globe or here domestically in education and economic mobility, and that we're going to double down over the next 20 years to do our part and everything that we can with our partners to tackle those pressing issues. And that announcement was powerful because, again, the context was powerful. It's like there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And to be able to say one thing that our organization is certain about is our commitment to these challenges. That was number one. So that was exciting. Two is our partners and our employees just had a ton of enthusiasm and excitement. And while not a lot of our work is changing, because we have critical priorities that we've been working on since the foundation was created, like education, or like health, and more recently, economic mobility. The idea that we have a clear timeline and in most of our work, a line of sight to make step function change in the world together with our partners was a powerful experience to be surrounded by some of our partners and employees who are sharing that. So we're committed. We're in the work that we're in, and our success factors aren't changing. It's that we're going to do everything that we can to help build systems that truly, and long after we're gone, allow and enable people to realize their full potential in our priorities around the globe, and certainly in our priorities here in the United States.
So I'm going to give you the greatest honor it could happen in your life, and that I'm going to ask you to pretend that you are Mayor Golston for a minute,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that you're leading a community and you're trying to figure out what are the first steps to improving economic mobility for your residents. what would the three or four things you would start with doing, Mayor Golston?
Mayor Golston in the house. I should just
Yes.
say that. I appreciate it. I've
See,
always wanted to.
I've elevated you, man. Not Congress, not
No,
president. That's a
I
step
actually would be.
down.
I'd actually be called Mayor Allan because I think formality is not something that I always think is helpful. So I'd be called Mayor Allan. So I want to establish myself
All
as
right,
that.
Mayor Allan.
But the first thing I would do, and I appreciate the question, the first thing I would do is listen, because in many ways you cannot do anything meaningful or lasting unless you really listen and you connect with your constituents, you understand their hopes and dreams, and you understand their barriers, and you go beyond the data, which is important, and you listen and get stories, because those stories combined with the data to me is what really then can lead into the purpose. And I believe being able to then have those stories and then form a purpose, a set of priorities that you're really committed to, I think it would have to include things that boost economic mobility. I think you would have to have pathways to jobs. I think you'd have to focus on education. I think you would have to focus on the top barriers that individuals and families are experiencing in the city or community in order to be able for them and their families to thrive. And so I would want to craft that in a way that was definitely informed by communities who I think are the experts or constituents and stakeholders. And then I would come up with powerful um, ideas that would really make a difference, that are proven, that are measurable, that are uh, uh, that are resonant with the local issues and the local opportunities. And I would hire the best team in the world, and I would get to work and start getting it done. So that's the process I would go through. And in terms of the priorities, it'd be hard to imagine that they didn't touch in some way the health, the education, or the jobs and workforce in some meaningful way. But obviously, that will vary based on context.
Well, Mayor Allen, Mayor AG, Mayor Golson, whatever you want to be called, that's some great advice. And I don't know if you even saw it, but you connected the thread of the work that you've done in your life. You know, the health, the education, and the workforce. And so I want to thank you on behalf of all the cities, towns, and villages in America and the National League of Cities for being on City Speak today, because you dropped a lot of knowledge that is going to be helpful to our members to address one of the most difficult challenges in America, and that is moving up in economic mobility and getting the right opportunities, overcoming the barriers that are out there. And you've inspired people through this podcast to say, yes, you can, and you will. And I also like to thank the Gates Foundation for their investment in the National League of Cities and Associations. And I'm sure Bill and Melinda and the entire family will look back on impact that they've had on the world, but especially here in the U.S. in communities. So again, thank you so much for being here and providing your perspective. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Clarence. And the thanks goes to you and the communities out there and the leadership out there who are in the field every day doing everything possible to boost economic mobility. There's no way the foundation could do this without the types of partners and the types of just energy and commitment that you and your colleagues have to do this work. So thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to continuing to see just unbelievable things happen in our communities and the things that make this country so great. So thank you again.
Thank you. And that's City Speak today. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks for listening to City Speak with Clarence Anthony. If you like this show, let us know. Share this episode with your friends and make sure to subscribe. We're curious to hear what you think, what you want more of, and how we can improve. If you have feedback or an idea for a guest you'd like Clarence to sit down with, send us your thoughts at cityspeakpodcast@nlc.org. Join us next month for a new episode. Like and subscribe here or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.